You ever look at a woman walking alone, handling her biz, paying her bills, building her empire, and think she lonely? Nah, that ain't weakness, that's power in disguise. See, people get it twisted. They think if she ain't got a man, she missing something. Truth is, she left what was holding her back. She ain't waiting on a savior. She became her own. This ain't about bitterness. It's about boundaries. It's about a woman who chose peace over problems, freedom over fake love, and silence over screaming matches. She ain't cold. She just got tired of settling for less. And now, she moving different, elevating, unapologetic. So if you ever thought you weak for being alone, think again. You looking at someone who walked through fire and came out ice cold. She didn't get left, she walked away. That's the part they never tell you. Of ran. They'll see her alone and assume she got played, abandoned, or wasn't good enough to keep a man. But that's the lie they comfort themselves with, because the truth shakes the room. The truth makes people uncomfortable. She didn't get left, she got tired. She got tired of the cycles. Ran the gaslighting, the half-effort apologies, and the recycled promises. She got tired of waiting for someone to be consistent with her, while she was giving 100% and getting crumbs. So she made a decision that most people are too scared to make. She walked, see, ran. It takes guts to leave what's familiar, even if it hurts, even if it breaks you a little inside. But she knew what staying would cost her. Her self-respect, her energy, her future. And once a woman starts calculating the price of her peace, it's game over. She ain't playing small no more. She ain't dimming her light to make someone else feel secure. Ran, she ain't gonna explain over and over again what she needs, what she deserves, how she wants to be loved. Because if you gotta keep repeating it, you're not being heard. And if you're not being heard, you're being ignored. She walked away not because she's weak, but because she finally understood her worth. It's crazy how people see a woman standing on her own and assume it's a sad story. They don't realize the kind of strength it takes to choose yourself, to wake up in an empty bed and still make the coffee, handle the bills, ran and chase your goals like nobody ever doubted you. It's a level of discipline most people never reach. And she reached it not because she wanted to, but because she had to. Because being with the wrong person was draining her more than being alone ever could. You see, some women wake up one day and just say, that's enough. Enough of the manipulation. Ran enough of pretending like everything's okay when it's not. Enough of accepting love with conditions, love that only shows up when it's convenient. Ran, love that makes you question yourself more than it builds you up. She realized she was bending, breaking, compromising so much that she didn't even recognize herself in the mirror anymore. And when that moment hit, when the silence became clearer than his words ever were, she grabbed her bag, her pride, and her peace, and walked. Ran, she walked away from the table because there was no real food being served, just empty conversations and cold affection, just vibes with no vision. Ran, and she ain't built for that. She's not here to babysit a man's potential. She's not here to wait for someone to maybe grow up one day. Ran. She's not putting her future on hold for someone who's still trying to figure out what loyalty even means. She's not going to be the therapist. Ran, the cheerleader, the mama, and the girlfriend all in one, while getting half the love she gives out. So she made that cold decision. Ran, the one where you around and realize no one's coming to save you. So you save yourself. That moment when you understand that no one's ever going to love you right until you love yourself enough to stop accepting wrong. That's when she walked. And walking didn't mean she stopped caring. It meant she started caring more about herself, about her future, about her energy. She stopped watering a garden where the roots were already dead. And she planted herself in better soil. Now she's alone, but she's not broken. She's healing. She's glowing different. She's moving quiet, not because she's hiding, but because peace don't make noise. She's focused, she's intentional. And yeah, some days it's hard. I would have ran, some nights feel heavy, but none of that compares to the weight she carried in a relationship where love was one-sided. She's learning to enjoy her own company, to clap for herself, to build without waiting for someone to hand her the bricks. Ran, she didn't get left. Don't ever get it twisted, she left. And not because she stopped loving him, but because she finally started loving herself. Peace costs more than company, and she paid in full. Ran. Most people don't understand what that means because they've never truly had to choose between having someone beside them and having their soul at rest. But she did. And when the time came to make that choice, she didn't hesitate. She could have stayed. She could have kept the fake smiles, the forced conversations, the empty companionship. But deep down, she knew what it was costing her. Not in dollars, but in dignity. Not in status, but in sanity. Peace ain't cheap. And she knew that the company she kept was draining her in ways that silence never could. Ran, there's a difference between being alone and being at peace. She figured that out the hard way. See, when you're with the wrong person, your mind is never settled. You're always wondering, always questioning, always waiting for the next argument, the next letdown, the next lie dressed up as love. That kind of stress becomes a lifestyle. It robs you of sleep. It steals your joy. And it makes you start shrinking yourself just to keep the peace that was never there in the first place. So one day she said, enough. Not loud, not dramatic, just real, quiet, powerful. She chose peace over presence. She walked away from conversations that went in circles, ran from affection that came with conditions, from love that only showed up when it was convenient. Because even when she had someone lying next to her, she felt alone. Even when there were 2 toothbrushes in the holder, it didn't feel like home. She was surrounded by noise, but none of it brought her peace. And when you live like that long enough, Ran, you start realizing how expensive it is to keep someone around just so you don't feel lonely. That's when she decided to pay the full price for peace, and it cost her the relationship. It's wild how society makes it seem like having company is always better than being alone. Like a woman is only whole when she's got someone holding her hand. But nobody talks about the weight of being with someone who constantly makes you question your value. Nobody talks about the nights she cried quietly so he wouldn't hear. Nobody talks about the fake laughs, the forced dinners, the way her light dimmed a little more every day just trying to keep something that wasn't even real anymore. Ran, she learned that keeping company just to fulfill the silence ends up being louder than solitude ever could be. Ran, she started waking up differently once she chose peace. No more tension in her chest. No more pretending everything was okay. Ran, no more wondering if she was asking for too much just because she wanted to feel loved, respected, heard. The air felt lighter. Her thoughts were clearer. She could hear herself think again. And in that quiet, she found strength. Strength that had been buried under compromises. Power that had been silenced by manipulation. She found herself again. And that was worth more than any temporary comfort. People didn't understand why she left. They thought she was doing too much, that she gave up too fast. But they didn't know the nights she stayed hoping things would change. They didn't see the way she poured into someone who gave her back a fraction of what she gave. Have ran. They didn't feel the confusion of being with someone who said all the right words but delivered none of the action. So she stopped explaining herself. She let them assume what they wanted. Because real peace don't require a public announcement. It just shows up in how you move different, how you breathe easier, how your smile becomes real again. She paid in full, with tears, with time, with the ache of walking away from someone she once imagined forever with. But she never looked back, because peace doesn't let you second guess. It sits with you in the quiet and reminds you why you chose it. It shows you what real love looks like, starting with how you treat yourself. She no longer fears being alone. She fears giving up her peace for someone who doesn't know what to do with it. Ran, she fears going back to a version of herself that had to pretend just to keep the peace on the surface while drowning underneath. So when people ask her why she's alone, she smiles, because they see solitude, but she feels serenity. They see absence, but she knows she's full. They see space, but she sees freedom. Peace doesn't shout, it doesn't beg, it doesn't chase. It just waits for you to realize what you're really worth. And once you do, no amount of company is worth selling yourself short ever again. Loneliness ain't her enemy, disrespect is. People always assume that when a woman lives alone or chooses solitude, it must mean she's broken, bitter, or just unlucky in love. They think her silence is sadness, her independence is a defense mechanism, her stillness is some kind of punishment. But they never stop to consider that maybe, just maybe, she's not afraid of being alone. She's just finally done tolerating what she doesn't deserve. Loneliness doesn't keep her up at night. Lies do. Broken promises do. Being disrespected by someone she gave her heart to. That's what hurts more than any quiet room ever could. She's learned that being in a relationship doesn't automatically mean you're not lonely. There's a kind of isolation that comes from being with the wrong person that no amount of physical presence can fix. It's when you're sitting next to someone and still feel misunderstood, unseen. It's when you share a bed but not your soul. She's felt that kind of loneliness, the one that's wrapped in fake intimacy and shallow conversation. So now she chooses the kind of space that doesn't come with betrayal, confusion, or second guessing herself every day. She chooses the kind of alone that protects her, rather than the kind of together that breaks her. Disrespect doesn't always come loud and obvious. Sometimes it shows up as sarcasm when she's being vulnerable. Sometimes it shows up in silence when she needs support. Sometimes it hides behind jokes that cut deep, or in the way someone constantly talks over her like her voice don't matter. She's felt the sting of being dismissed, talked down to, emotionally manipulated by someone who claimed to love her. And for a while, she let it slide. She told herself it was normal, that all relationships have problems, that love is about patience and compromise. But over time, those small acts of disrespect piled up into something she couldn't ignore anymore. They changed the way she saw herself. She used to think that walking away meant losing, that being alone meant she wasn't chosen. But now she knows that staying where you're not valued is the real loss. She knows that the real betrayal is betraying yourself just to keep someone else comfortable. And so she let go. She stopped waiting for apologies that never came. She stopped hoping that someone would finally wake up and treat her right. She stopped accepting the bare minimum just because it was familiar. She started demanding respect, not from others first, but from herself. There's a whole world that opens up when a woman stops fearing loneliness and starts fearing disrespect instead. She starts moving different. She sets higher standards. She becomes less available to people who only show up when they need something. She no longer explains her worth. She embodies it. She no longer tries to prove she's lovable. She knows she is. And in that mindset, the idea of being alone doesn't scare her. It strengthens her. It gives her the clarity to see who's really for her and who just wants access without accountability. She's not angry. She's not cold. She's just learned to protect her energy. She's learned to say no without guilt, to walk away without drama, to end conversations that go in circles. She doesn't waste her time trying to fix people who refuse to see their own damage. She's not here to raise a grown man. She's not here to be a placeholder, a convenience, or a backup plan. If you can't show up with respect, then don't show up at all. That's her rule now. And sure, there are moments when the silence feels heavy, when she misses having someone to share the small things with. But even in those moments, she remembers what it felt like to question her worth. She remembers the anxiety of wondering whether today would be a good day or another day filled with emotional tension. She remembers the way she used to second guess her words, her needs, her instincts, and that's what keeps her grounded. That's what reminds her that she didn't lose anything. She gained herself. She's not avoiding love. She's just waiting for the kind that doesn't come with disrespect as a package deal. She's open, but she's not desperate. She's hopeful, but she's not settling. She's walking with her head high, not because she thinks she's better than anyone else, but because she finally knows better than to accept less than she deserves. Loneliness ain't her enemy. It never was. It's just the space she created to heal from the real enemy. The years she spent thinking she had to earn basic respect from someone who never knew how to give it. She's not hard to love. She's just the part people misunderstand. They see her boundaries and call it attitude. They see her silence and call it bitterness. But what they don't see is the journey behind that strength. They don't see the nights she gave everything to someone who made her feel like it still wasn't enough. They don't know how many times she lowered her voice, her standards, her expectations just to be met halfway. They don't realize how many times she forgave, overlooked, tolerated, all in the name of love, only to be met with indifference or entitlement. So now she moves differently, not because she's heartless, but because she's finally hot, smart. She knows what it feels like to show up for someone who only notices when you stop. She knows how it feels to be the one who texts first, calls first, apologizes first, initiates everything, while the other person just sits back, comfortable in the assumption that she'll always be there. That kind of love makes you feel invisible, no matter how loud your presence is. So she learned. She stopped begging. She stopped chasing. She stopped pouring into people who only showed up with empty cups. She's not cold. She's cautious. She's not guarded. She's grown. She refuses to romanticize struggle. She's done believing that love has to come with pain, that being ignored is a test of loyalty, that if she just waits long enough, someone will change. She's no longer trying to prove she's worthy. She knows she is. She's not playing the role of the ride or die for someone who can't even meet her halfway. She's not sacrificing her peace just to keep someone who's unsure about her. She's not hard to love. She's just not for the weak, hearted or half present. What people don't get is that love for her isn't about the grand gestures or the Instagram captions. It's about consistency. It's about feeling emotionally safe. It's about the small things, the text that says, "I got you," the presence that feels like protection, the kind of energy that doesn't shift based on mood or convenience. She doesn't want perfection. She wants presence. She doesn't need a man to be rich, famous, or flawless. She just needs him to be real. Real with his words, his actions, and his intentions. But here's the thing she's not asking anymore. She used to drop hints hoping someone would care enough to notice. She used to explain her needs hoping someone would respect them. She used to cry in silence hoping someone would feel it. But those days are gone. She learned that the right one doesn't need a guidebook on how to love her. The right one just shows up and does the work, not because he has to, but because he wants to. She's not waiting around hoping to be chosen. She's already chosen herself. People call her intimidating. But what they really mean is that they can't manipulate her. They can't breadcrumb her with attention and expect her to stay loyal. They can't disappear for days and expect her to welcome them back with open arms. She knows her value. She knows her energy is rare. And she's no longer giving it to people who don't know how to handle it. She doesn't confuse attention with affection. She doesn't confuse presence with partnership. She knows the difference now, and that's what separates her from the version of herself that used to beg for bare minimum love. She's not anti-love. She's not against relationships. She believes in love deeply, but not the kind that leaves her questioning herself, not the kind that comes with silent treatments, hot and cold energy, or emotional games. She wants love that feels like clarity, not confusion. She wants love that speaks, not love that keeps her guessing. And until that kind of love shows up, she's not entertaining anything less. Her heart is open, but her standards are locked, and she's not hard to love. She's just unwilling to settle. She's not going to audition for a role in someone else's life. She's not going to compete for attention, affection, or basic respect. She knows what she brings to the table, and she's not afraid to eat alone until someone worthy pulls up a chair. She's learned that real love doesn't require sacrifice of self, doesn't require silence when she wants to speak, smallness when she was made to be big, or endurance when the only thing being tested is her patience with someone's immaturity. She's still soft, just with sharper edges. She still loves, just with more discernment. She still hopes, just with more wisdom. And while people may call her too much or too guarded, she's okay with that, because she'd rather be alone and respected than together and disregarded. ran, she'd rather wait for the right one than waste more years trying to make the wrong one fit. So no, she's not hard to love. She's just no longer entertaining anything that requires her to beg, shrink, or break just to be kept.